Urgent. Moldova is tearing into Moscow, Transnistria is under blockade, and a purge of Russians has begun there. It happened, Moscow has gone dark. An icy apocalypse has struck all of Russia. The blackout has reached the capital of the Russian Federation. Thousands of people are freezing in the dark, Kamchatka has been buried under snow. The Moscow region is going through its hardest period, while Ukraine is triumphant. The first major decision by Fedorov will close the country with an anti-drone dome. Zelenskyy has given the signal, and all of this has happened right now. Hello, I'm Renata Aslanova, and let's get started. Urgent news. Chisinau is severing its last ties with Moscow, the CIS is falling apart at the seams, Moldova is initiating its exit. The first major statements have already been made.
The Republic of Moldova will no longer be an official member of the CIS, and this process has already begun. We recently made this decision, and the approval process has started.
Thus, according to the official, it's likely approaching the final stage. All the important processes will be completed by mid-February, after which this decision will be made in Parliament. It should be noted that Moldova has signed a total of about 283 agreements within the CIS framework, of which 71 have already lost their validity, and about 60 other agreements have already been denounced. The Kremlin is visibly nervous. Chisinau has loudly slammed the door on its Soviet past. Therefore, for Russia, this is yet another alarming signal, especially against the backdrop of the war and the loss of influence in the region. In addition, Moldova has begun to more strongly insist on bringing Transnistria under its control. Bold statements have become more frequent amid the energy crisis created by Russia in the region.
Our goal is the reintegration of the country, which should begin with Russia withdrawing its troops, allowing us to properly administer the region. After all, we want a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Then a peaceful resolution starts with the withdrawal of troops.
However, it's not just about words. It has become known that the region is being cut off from military supplies. The media, citing their own sources, report on the complete isolation of the Russians.
Ukraine and Moldova have jointly imposed a total blockade on Transnistria, which indicates a clear shift in policy, closing all checkpoints and applying customs and security controls to everything entering or leaving the region.
About 1,500 Russian soldiers are left without their usual supply routes, fuel, equipment, and reserves. The grey schemes and customs loopholes that Kadyrov had used for years have been closed. Pressure is coming from all sides. Putin is caught in a vice.
Transnistria is no longer a zone of free passage, but a tightly controlled territory where external support is difficult and conspicuous. The apocalypse has finally backed Russia into a corner. Kamchatka is trapped in snow, people are getting out of their houses through the windows. That's it.
I'm off to work. Bye, Grisha. Bye.
The region has literally been buried in snow for 8 days now. The last time a cyclone like this hit Kamchatka was 50 years ago. Russia is quietly getting nervous.
You see how much snow there is, right? At least they managed to dig us out. Just like this. Up the wooden stairs, and we slowly step inside. That's it. This is
the apocalypse in Kamchatka. I finally came to Pergam. I wake up early, and the windows look something exactly like this.
Just so you understand, that's about 2.5 to 3 meters. We dug ourselves out, everything's great, but then there's the next problem. We can't get inside.
In December 2025, Petropavlovsk and Kamchatsky received more than 3 months' worth of precipitation. And in the first half of January 2026, the amount of precipitation had already exceeded the monthly norm by almost 1.5 times.
Traffic is paralyzed and public utilities are powerless against the elements. In some places, up to 4 meters of snow fell, cars completely disappeared under the drifts, and the roads became impassable.
A typical courtyard in Petropavlovsk, Kamchatsky. Oh, there's my car. Everyone has left me. I'm a huge snowdrift. I dug myself out from the top. Everything's fine.
And the cherry on top, public transportation has come to a complete halt. People are being transported in police vans. Yes, in special vehicles for detainees, you heard that right?
Due to severe weather conditions, public transport is not operating on the peninsula. To assist local residents, the National Guard has been brought in, and they are now transporting people along the Severny-Vostok checkpoint route in police vans.
And now to the show Blackout. Russians are getting used to sitting without electricity and heat. Kursk is leading the way. In
the Samsky district of Kursk, there was a power outage. No voltage is coming from CHP-1 to the industrial substation there.
The Komi Republic has joined in as well. The lights went out and don't seem to be coming back.
Over there's electricity, but right across the house doesn't have any. Across the road is Ganka's Hotel, Syktyvkar. And just to the right, there's another house. No power there either.
In recent days, the trend of self-destruction within the framework of decommunization, transformers, and substations continues.
The Moscow region is also reporting in. A fire broke out at an electrical substation in Serpukhov.
Let's hope nothing happens to us here. Look at the explosions happening over there.
Part of the city and nearby settlements have been left without electricity. The blackout has come right up to the outskirts of Moscow. You have to see this. This is a real sensation. They are planning to build an anti-drone dome over Ukraine. This was announced by the newly appointed Minister of Defense, Mykhailo Fedorov.
Our task is to build an anti-drone dome over Ukraine. A system that doesn't react after the fact but destroys the threat while it's still approaching.
The day before, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced radical changes in the approach to the air defense of the air forces. The new format focuses on mobile fire groups, interceptor drones, and other modern means. Short-range air defense, which will make the system more flexible and adaptive. According to him, this transformation is intended to increase response speed and maximize the effectiveness of every air defense element. Amid sensational news about the mysterious car accident involving Ramzan Kadyrov's beloved son Adam, Chechnya has been swept by a wave of rumors and intrigue. Talk of a change in power is not just intensifying, it is echoing across the entire Caucasus. Whom is the Kremlin preparing for the post of regional head? Who could really have had a hand in the accident involving the potential heir? Was it the Kadyrov clan, the FSB, the military, Moscow elites, or is there turmoil behind the scenes? The stakes are sky high, all the fiery details. Watch right now.
Over the past year, there have been countless rumors about Kadyrov's demise, but Putin's foot soldier is still standing. Although reports about his rapidly deteriorating health have multiplied, most recently, 49-year-old Ramzan Kadyrov's kidneys are said to be failing.
I am Putin's dedicated foot soldier, and you could certainly say that I am the president's personal project.
But the main question isn't when he'll die, but who will replace him. That's why, along with the news about the imminent demise of the head of Chechnya, there is active discussion about who in the end will lead the most subsidized region of the Russian Federation. And this is perhaps the most interesting question.
Thank you once again for everything you do for the Chechen Republic and for all of Russia, the Russian Federation. We won't let you down, Vladimir Ilyich.
I will continue to see Grozny flourish. I know the city is actively developing. Well, just like the Chechen Republic as a whole. You personally are doing a lot to make this happen. I know that as well. You are reviving both the spiritual sphere and the material base.
There are two options. The first, well-known one, Kadyrov will pass power on as an inheritance. Despite the fact that Ramzan appointed his eldest son, 20-year-old Akhmat, as deputy prime minister of Chechnya, Don is betting on his favorite, 18-year-old Adam. And according to the head of the Chechen opposition movement, ADAT, this option has already been agreed upon with the Kremlin. That's why the rumors that the Kremlin was involved in Adam's recent car accident are not true.
The FSB officers not only won't attempt an assassination, on the contrary, they will do everything to protect him. He's their project. Adam Kadyrov is their project. Ramzan Kadyrov is the Kremlin's project. Akhmat Kadyrov is the Kremlin's project. Akhmat Kadyrov, before the war began, before the Second War, the Russo-Chechen War, he met with Putin.
Let me remind you, on January 16th, Adam was involved in a serious car accident in Grozny.
And that is essentially all there is to it. Everyone is fighting half-heartedly. That's the attitude towards the ambulance.
While driving, he crashed into a guardrail at high speed. Well, then a chain reaction started, and all the cars in his motorcade began to collide.
Friday, January 16th, that day was Kamzat Kadyrov's birthday. He is Ramzan Kadyrov's nephew and Adam Kadyrov's cousin. And they were celebrating his birthday. They were celebrating there. Kamzat Kadyrov was there, along with Adam Kadyrov, basically many of their cousins, extended relatives, and close acquaintances. These were people from their very inner circle, just a group of young guys. They were joyfully celebrating, driving all around the city streets in Grozny during the festivities.
Soon after, Adam was urgently evacuated to Moscow on a government plane, although Adam's injuries were not life-threatening. But when it comes to the successor of the head of Chechnya, it's better to be overly cautious than not cautious enough. Officially, the traffic accident involving Adam was not commented on in Chechnya. Kadyrov's team, in turn, published a video meeting where Adam was present, along with his talented... The offspring received yet another award, this time for contributions to improving safety at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. But soon the media found out that the video was recorded on January 15th, the day before the accident. But let's get back to the issue of succession. If his father were to die, Adam would not be able to immediately become the head of Chechnya. He's too young. That's why a nominal head will be appointed, just as it was with Ramzan back in the 2000s. It's quite possible that they will rule. At first, Adam will be helped by his father's closest associates, Magomed Daudov and Adam Delimkhanov. With this arrangement, the Kadyrov clan is sitting pretty. And it is precisely this course of events that the Chechen opposition insists on. It's all quite simple. Putin has invested too much money in the Kadyrov clan and knows how to work with them. Plus, it's unlikely that anyone else could control Chechnya the way Kadyrov and his people do.
How much effort Russia, the Kremlin, has spent on Kadyrov, on their own project. He was controlled by them, purely their project, their man. And now, after so many years, they've suddenly decided to shut it down? Well, that doesn't even make sense.
There is also an alternative scenario, which is what the Russian opposition insists on. Supposedly, the Kremlin is tired of Kadyrov and his people. And Putin decided no Sultan in Chechnya. And
they don't need a new one. A new Kadyrov? Why? There was already enough trouble with this Kadyrov. So most likely, the Kadyrov family, his entire clan, will be removed from power altogether. And that's why neither Daudov nor Delimkhanov, in my personal opinion, his closest associates, will be appointed as his successors. Well, as for Adam Kadyrov, I've already mentioned, he's 17 years old. It's simply physically impossible, technically impossible.
A Kremlin-affiliated Telegram channel even reports that more than a month ago, they began searching for a new head of Chechnya in Moscow.
Vladimir Vladimirovich is fully informed about Ramzan Akhmatovich's health and the situation in Chechnya. There is nothing alarming or requiring urgent action happening there right now, but unexpected problems could arise. That's why Vladimir Vladimirovich instructed to select 3 to 5 candidates for the position of head of the Republic. Just in case. We are working on it, the channel's source reported. He clarified that there are already 2 candidates, but he refused to name them for now. And
these names are unlikely to be connected to the Kadyrov clan. But this does not change the fact that Ramzan's family is holding on to power. That's why even the British Times writes that a power struggle is brewing in Chechnya. Moreover, they predict a confrontation among security forces over Chechnya as well. After all, there are reportedly many in Moscow who disagree with passing power in Chechnya by inheritance. In
the first place, the head of the investigative committee, Alexander Bastrykin. It is believed that he is generally irritated by the permissiveness of a regional leader who sees himself as a figure of much greater stature than just Chechnya. Another opponent of hereditary succession is the FSB director, Alexander Bortnikov. In fact, the country's main security service is also Ramzan's main enemy.
If events develop in this way, according to Russian media, the Kremlin may bet on well-known Chechen candidates. After all, the bunker dictator understands that it won't be possible to install someone from Moscow. One of the options is the already mentioned Adam Delimkhanov, the unofficial head of the Chechen mafia, Ramzan's fourth cousin and his right-hand man.
Delimkhanov is viewed by Moscow not so much as an independent successor, but rather as a key guarantor of stability and the transfer of power. A person who would satisfy both Grozny and Moscow, integrated into the elite system, connected with the security forces, and quite controllable.
The Kremlin is also reportedly considering the candidacy of Magomed Daudov, the Republic's prime minister. It is he who will become the acting head of Chechnya in the event of Kadyrov's death. In any case, Putin needs a controllable Chechnya as a lever of intimidation and suppression of uprisings within Russia. The complex question of whether a long-standing family dynasty will continue to remain firmly at the helm of their established enterprise is currently a subject of intense and widespread debate among industry analysts, family members, and external stakeholders. This ongoing discussion explores the balance between maintaining traditional values and the necessity of modernizing leadership structures to ensure the organization's future success in a rapidly changing global market. The collapse of the empire begins with a shocking detail. Look!
Russia is facing another series of scandals involving so-called representatives of a non-titular nation. Kadyrov's commander, Alaudinov, explains why Russians cannot marry Chechen women.
500,000 people ask this question every day, the same question. Why can't a Chechen woman marry a Russian? Wait. Firstly, who knows that you are Russian, or who are you? Is this instead of constantly shouting about how bad Chechens are to the Russians? We need to give them advice so that they return to their traditions. And
here's the news. It turns out that it is the Russians who are to blame for not respecting the Chechens. And for example, Alaudinov himself once wanted to marry a Russian woman, but he wasn't allowed to. I
had a girlfriend with whom we had such a relationship that we decided to get married. Her name was Ira. She might even see this. When she came home and told her mother that she wanted to marry a Chechen, she was forbidden to marry me. Her sister, her mother, they gave her an ultimatum. If you marry a Chechen, we will completely disown you. So I can pretty much tell you that today I can say, there are thousands of people who would never in their lives let their daughter marry out. To a Muslim, to a Chechen. That's just how it is.
But it's not only the peoples within Russia who suffer from pervasive racism. For example, propagandist Solovyov stated that the ungrateful Armenians should be punished and that a so-called special military operation should be launched in Armenia.
The loss of Armenia. Now that's a huge problem. A problem for our country. Asia, Central Asia, as I call it. This could become a huge problem for us. We need to clearly define our goals and objectives. We need to make it clear the games are over. Forget about international law, the international order. If for our national security, it was necessary to launch the special military operation on the territory of Ukraine,
then why, based on the same reasoning, can't we start a special military operation in other areas within our sphere of influence?
Before this, the unhinged Solovyov had already suggested invading Azerbaijan. In his sick mind, you're either Russian or second class with no right to speak. And
I want to remind you of the amount of money being transferred from Russia to Azerbaijan, not from Azerbaijan to Russia.
And then apparently the situation could change dramatically.
Is that exactly what they're counting on? Or is it because of the 300 kilometers of border?
And when you read what they're allowing themselves to say and watch how, on central television, they allow themselves to say things like, "Do you want to go to war?"
At the same time, in Russia, the so-called Russian community is growing, supposedly a public organization, but with total hatred towards migrants. Supposedly under the guise of protecting Russians, they go on raids against migrants without any orders and bear no responsibility for the beatings and abuse.
Those guys who live next door to him and cook pilaf. Today they're cooking, but tomorrow their heads could be cut off. They're already brazenly, openly saying it, not just to us, but to these women as well. Yours are over there, and we're here. They live over there. They'll be lying there, and here we'll, as they say, have our way with you. In terms of percentages, we're still losing to the migrants. So if tomorrow, for example, it starts a war and the migrants are against the Russians, we'll lose it.
Rumor has it that the Russian community is under the protection of the main opponent of migrants, the head of the investigative committee Bastrikin, whose main goal is to send as many newcomers to the front as possible.
That's our trend too, we started it. We catch them during raids, register them and send them there. Some people are going, as I already said, about 10,000 have gone, but many are also slipping away.
That's why news about recruiting citizens from so-called friendly countries into the Russian army is appearing more and more actively online. The new trend is Indians, who are lured to Russia supposedly to work in the service sector, and then, in a surprising turn, end up in meat grinder assaults. We
informed our command that the Prime Minister of India is negotiating with the President of Russia for our release. But they don't want to listen to us. They're sending us to the front line. Many here have already died.
The agent also told me that I would be doing loading and unloading work. But when I arrived at the address, I saw military personnel there. I told them that I didn't want to serve in the army. They threatened me, saying that if I didn't sign the contract, they would kill me. After that, they gave us a training that lasted only a few days and then sent us to the front line.
One thing is absolutely clear. No matter how much the Russian authorities go on about a multinational country, everyone except themselves is just a resource, which they conveniently and ruthlessly use for their criminal purposes.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. The Kremlin's rose returns, Zaluzhnyi leaves London, a triumphant return to Ukraine, insiders are blowing up the internet. On the former commander-in-chief's desk lies something sensational. Will he return to the helm of the Ukrainian armed forces to deliver the final blow to the enemy? Meanwhile, he is already being predicted a seat as head of state. The secret meeting with Zelenskyy was not for nothing. Watch for all the details.
General Zaluzhnyi is returning to Ukraine.
It's a very difficult task to change your line of work. But because I've spent my whole life learning and trying new things, this process went very smoothly for me. And I feel right at home. A concentration of rumors
And responsibility for the questions. And the level of information campaign surrounding former commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Valery Zaluzhny, is indeed extremely high right now.
There is a certain aura surrounding Zaluzhny which has gradually evolved and developed in the collective public consciousness as a distinctive kind of enduring myth about a good general, a responsible patriot, and a highly respected and decent diplomat.
The rumors were further fueled by the fact that Zaluzhny is currently in Ukraine and has already had a personal meeting with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. It took place at the president's office. During the meeting, they also discussed diplomatic tasks, as the president stated.
I thanked him for his work as part of Ukraine's team. And it's important that we are all together defending Ukraine's independence, our national interest, our people. We discussed diplomatic tasks that are relevant now and can strengthen all of us, Ukraine and our resilience. Glory to Ukraine.
The media are speculating that Zaluzhny is preparing to leave his diplomatic post in London and has allegedly expressed his desire to resign to the president of Ukraine.
Now, to elevate this image to the level of political leadership, it probably requires a constant presence in Kyiv, in Ukraine, especially during the most difficult period Ukraine is going through, with intensified drone and missile attacks and an escalation of fighting on the front lines.
Zaluzhny's media advisor Oksana Torob denied this information at the end of the year. She stated that Zaluzhny remains in his position as ambassador and does not plan to resign.
As always, unnamed sources know everything about Zaluzhny and his plans. But nothing has changed. He continues to defend Ukraine's interests as ambassador to the United Kingdom.
In late autumn, Valery Zaluzhny shared his vision of how the war in Ukraine might end. He noted that a quick peace would mean the loss of independence. A long-term cessation of the war gives a chance for recovery.
When we talk about victory, to be honest, it means the destruction of the Russian Empire. And defeat means the complete occupation of Ukraine and its collapse. Everything else is just prolonging the war. We Ukrainians, of course, strive for complete victory, that is, the downfall of the Russian Empire.
Late December, journalists reported, citing sources, about plans for Zaluzhnyi to return to Ukraine and resign from his position as ambassador.
He and the president discussed various positions for Zaluzhnyi, from prime minister to head of the president's office, but at that time, he did not show any interest.
Perhaps Zaluzhnyi knows more, which is why he is ready to move on. According to other sources, for a certain period, Zaluzhnyi even considered the position of ambassador to the US or head of the president's office.
There really was talk about recruiting Zaluzhnyi for one of the high-ranking positions. And throughout 2025, this was discussed, but as many sources say, Zaluzhnyi declined the position of ambassador, definitely the head of the president's office. And I don't think that he or anyone else is seriously considering this.
But the return of Zaluzhnyi to the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine is extremely unlikely. Because before being appointed as ambassador, in July 2024, he underwent a military medical commission which found the general unfit for military service and removed him from the register.
In order to take the position of commander-in-chief, Zaluzhnyi would need to be mobilized again, but he has been declared unfit. Of course, in our country, anything is possible, but his appointment is extremely unlikely. Besides, Zaluzhnyi himself is unlikely to want this. Taking the same position for a second time is always a political disadvantage. In the
media space, rumors also surface from time to time about Zaluzhnyi allegedly intending to run in the elections.
This is accompanied by the level of support, the perception within the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine, widely known as the AFU. His highly successful positioning as the commander-in-chief is largely due to the fact that he is closely associated with the remarkable Kharkiv offensive operation, the significant liberation of Kherson, and his genuine deep-seated attention to the well-being of ordinary soldiers. Regarding the details of his leadership,
possible presidential ambitions of Valery Zaluzhnyi, people have been talking since as early as April 2022.
It is obvious that sooner or later he would have had to return to Ukraine in order to find the starting point for his political ambitions and begin forming his own political team.
Zaluzhnyi's political activity and personal influence continued to grow throughout the full-scale war. But while being in the United Kingdom in the position of, he will not be able to build a team and move in that direction.
For the Americans, in some ways, Zaluzhnyi could be an even more difficult partner to work with than the current president, Zelenskyy. Although, for example, Zaluzhnyi could be supported by the United Kingdom and European countries.
Zaluzhnyi himself has never confirmed the rumors about his presidential ambitions. And in October 2025, he stated that he does not recognize any ideas of holding elections during the war. They are not creating headquarters or parties and have no ties to political forces.
The whole audience wants me to ask you one question. Valery Fedorovich, will you run? In order to
answer this question, let's first get to the conditions under which these questions would be appropriate. When such conditions arise, as a person in public service, I will be ready to answer these questions.
But experts believe that the position of British ambassador is just an intermediate step in the career of the former commander-in-chief.
The commander-in-chief, a former commander-in-chief who was associated with certain victories. Next, an ambassador that is a diplomat, which is directly related to the qualities that a citizen has. The voter endows the office of president as the supreme leader, the commander-in-chief, and as the key foreign policy actor, in other words, the person responsible for foreign policy. So, in fact, the position of ambassador actually adds presidential charisma to Zaluzhnyi, helping to complete his image as a future-ready president.
How he will be able to prove himself in the current situation and how events will unfold next is unknown. Whether Valery Zaluzhnyi will truly want to, and eventually be able to, make the significant move from the ambassador's office to the presidential one is a question that remains to be seen. We are closely following the developments of this situation and will definitely make sure to keep you fully updated in our future episodes. We will continue to monitor every detail as it unfolds.